is.
This is the Best Book Club. Welcome back. I'm your host, Asalam, aka Nufatora, and on this episode, I have the elusive Mystic Man.
Charmer. Not that hard to find.
Pretty difficult to get on a podcast, though.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I finally got you on. How do I describe this?
Mm-hmm.
You have not written anything in a long time, and I fall in that category as well.
Ages.
And I'm curious why that is.
Well, let me think about that, because the main reason, as boring as it sounds, is mostly just being really busy with just college and university and stuff. Because I made the mistake of taking a lot of classes at once. So I was pretty occupied for a while. The other reason, I guess the more realistic one really, is that I just haven't really had any... Like, my style of writing, definitely not what I would recommend, is building up a story in my head to the point where I have to, like, get it on paper or something, because then it just needs to be done. The only issue with that is that if I don't have anything at all that I'm thinking about, or if I'm not, like, thinking of it, then nothing really happens. So it's kind of an organic thing, and I guess you could say it's not quite writer's block, because that implies that you want to do something and you just can't. This is more of like it's kind of more of a natural process where it just happens on its own, and I mean it just hasn't been happening. And I've been doing some writing for other things, nothing really like that crazy or important, just unless you count like lab reports and the occasional like bit of D&D lore. That's kind of about it, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm pretty similar in that regard. It just comes and goes when I actually want to write, and it's been a long time since I wanted to write. So, and it doesn't help that 2 of my laptops have crashed. So,
that definitely doesn't help at all.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so I think that's enough straying into Hans territory. I think what we're really here to talk about today is the Willsville Turf War.
Oh my god, I still need to go back and fix so many little grammar errors. Oh!
I read both parts.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely say it's one of those sort of hidden gems in the community.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
This may just be because I'm in the middle of watching Bleach. Are you familiar with that at all?
Not at all. I am familiar enough to know what it is and vaguely what the plot is and some of the characters and like a little bit of the magic system, but that's it.
Magic system. Okay. Wait. Yeah. So I mean, you don't have to know like the nitty gritty and the ins and outs of it, but as long as you're familiar, like you know of Bleach. But for any who don't know, it's basically just an anime/manga about death gods who use swords. And back in the day when it was being released, it was one of the top 3. They called it the big 3 shonen manga. The other 2 being One Piece and Naruto. But I think it's just because I'm in the middle of watching that anime in anticipation of the final arc of the story being released for anime in October this year, I guess now. But it definitely, as you told me during our conversation way back, it definitely does feel anime-esque.
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty easy explanation for that one, too.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like, was that on purpose, or was it just happen? And
that was entirely an accident, actually. Because when I wrote it, I'm not sure why I wrote it when I did, and I don't mean that in the sense of, like, the days that I wrote it. I mean the times that I write it. for whatever reason, I only really felt motivated to write it at like 12-ish a.m. or like 1 a.m. in the morning. So I'm not really sure what happened there. Like that was kind of a natural thing. Like I mean, I think what happened was that around that time I was getting more into like various pieces of like anime and stuff like that. So a bit of it probably just bled over into my writing style. And that's kind of the best explanation I've got for now. Aside from that, it was mostly by accident because I think it was Hans actually that mentioned that before too, where he was like, it seems a bit strangely anime for some reason, and I was like, I never picked up on that, but now that you mention it, I can kind of see it.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily in a bad way that it goes towards anime, because I mean I've kind of there's even just like little tropes from anime and manga that I've picked up on, like I think I don't remember which part of it was in, but where some of the characters would basically be like, that's impossible. How did they do it?
Oh
Like
my
that.
god!
Yeah, like that kind of that. I honestly never really minded because it just like that's the world that it's set in, and some people talk like that. So
Yeah,
okay,
I get
so
what you mean. Like it makes sense in the world, but once you take it out of that context, it's like, oh, it's a bit over dramatic. But it makes sense for it in the context of what's happening.
well, yeah, but I mean, take anything out of context, and generally, it's not really going to make much sense. That the context is what makes anything make that sense.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Oh, you know what? I think I might have just figured out a little bit of why it's a bit anime tinged. It could be that I kind of like to have a little more expression in my characters. So
Yeah,
like I like my characters to be very expressive and or quirky just because, I like to have that bit of eccentricity, which, kind of exists a little bit just in our lives anyway, but not to that, just not cranked up to 11. And that's also a very common anime thing where things are just like, let's just crank this up to 11. And, that's just how it is. Like, it's cool and all, and it works for anime. But if you, like, we've all seen live action anime, and I'm pretty sure some of us can agree that
cool.
it kind of, it tries, it really does, but it doesn't always work out very well when you see it in, like, real life. And it kind of only really works in that way.
Yeah, I think just about everybody would agree with that. I haven't seen a single good live action adaptation for anime. I mean, they've done it for
Oh,
Fullmetal Alchemist, Cowboy Bebop most recently, Dragon Ball Z, which was probably the worst offender of it. The Last Airbender.
I don't know, man. The Attack on Titan one looked pretty rough around the edges.
Yeah, and the death. Like, what I'm saying is, like, all of these, they try, but they don't get it because like you said, I really think that some of these things are just they're meant, they only really work in an animated form or on paper, because in the back of our minds we sort of know that it doesn't actually exist,
Yeah.
and so we can kind of suspend our disbelief as to these things actually happening, whereas you see it done by real people, and you're like, okay, would somebody actually do that? Would someone, and these live action adaptations happen after the fact, so we've already consumed the source material that it's based on, and it just, people have high expectations, like I did for the Cowboy Bebop one. I think that was the first
Oh.
one that I actually heard about before it was released,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a huge fan of Cowboy Bebop, and
Oh, I'm
I just
sorry, man. I am so
as
sorry.
I didn't even bother to watch it. As soon as I saw the casting for it, I was like, no, I'm good. I don't need this in my life. Um, and I I have the original, and I didn't know there was a movie for it, so I can watch that now as well. But I'm so why? So I guess the big question that comes to mind: why only 2 parts? Were you planning on having something more? Because when I was glancing at your other stories, I saw Willsville mentioned in other places. Is this just one instance happening in Willsville?
So, well, with the 2-part thing for the first part of your question, is that it was only supposed to be 2 parts. The only problem is that I when I originally wrote it, it was one just really big block, and it had like 3/4 of the second part in it, and I was like, I can't just put the whole giant block in it. That would be kind of boring. Like I get that some people do enjoy just an absolute unit of a story to go through, but for me, I'm like, I mean, it's nice, I guess, but I'm just breaking it into 2 pieces. And you know what? In hindsight, the story might have suffered a little bit from that, because it does feel a bit rushed near the ending. But it was only really supposed to be 2 parts, and I kind of just messed with the pacing a bit too much on that one. And I mean, it either was going to be 2 parts or just one really chunky story. And I just kind of made a bad call with that one by accident. It's like, you know what? Maybe it works better as 2 parts. As it turns out, it kind of works, but not really the way it was supposed to. As for Willsville being mentioned in other places, in other stories, as I don't know if you remember from like the last time we interacted on like what was it, the writers panel or something like that, or with or what was it, the best wedgie in writing debate and all of that. But I am very much like, I like a good setting. So to me, a good setting really makes a story. And so it's more of like all of this is happening within this setting. It's a bit well, actually, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like these stories are happening within this setting. And for the most part, they do run like chronologically. So, Mafia or Mafia doesn't take place before the Willsville Turf War, even if like necessarily you can't really tell that. And there are some ones that are like clearly just earlier or just not entirely all there, like a Summer's Reality and that kind of thing. So it's just meant to be just a setting to put everything into for it to work out as a story.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, I mean, towns aren't just one small spot where everybody hangs out and interacts. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen all over it, and characters may never interact because they're just far apart. So, I mean, it does work when you have, I think it does work just having it kind of be the focal point of your writing universe in a way. And I think people do create their own universes for all their stories. Like the ones that I've put out, I definitely feel like all fall into the same universe, just in different areas. I guess the second big question that comes to mind then is, where are the adults, or are these bullies and nerds? Are they all adults, and they've kind of just settled themselves into this caste system?
Well, you see, that is an excellent question, because I had put zero thought into that when I was writing it. There was no consideration up until you mentioned that. I'm like, that actually is a good question. Where are all the adults?
But that's why I'm asking these questions, so you don't. I can cut this out. You can pretend like you planned it out all along.
No, that's perfect. Okay, no, it's fine just the way it is, because like I really didn't consider it at all. Like I know I've mentioned a couple here and there, like someone's parents or what was it, like the occasional biker gang or that one dive bar that they visited or something like that. Like, I guess it's more like, how do I put this? I guess it's more like the characters slash like the younger kids and the adults just kind of have their own separate spheres of influence. And it just so
Hmm.
happens that they don't touch at all or something like that. I guess it's a very
Okay.
I guess it's a very convoluted way of explaining. I didn't think about that actually, but here's a good explanation for why they don't interact at all.
Well, I mean, I can definitely go along with it because you just automatically roll with it right from the beginning. It's as I've said many times in previous podcasts, like what I'm looking for is in stories is reality within the universe that it's set in. And so when a writer is putting out the story and figuring it out, then they're creating and defining the rules of that universe, or they're working within rules of a universe that already existed. And as long as they abide by them, then it's realistic. And one of those rules I feel that you set up with this two-part story is that there either are no adults or they are busy doing something else, so you never see them. Either that, or it's implied that the people in the story are the adults, and they've just, like I said, they're kind of fallen into this caste system, which is, I guess, is more headcanon for me, but it definitely, that kind of feels like it fits more, is that like this town, this old lumber town has sort of regressed into a sort of caste system.
Hmm. Well, I can tell you right now that the characters, I mean, I guess legally speaking, yes, they're adults because what was it? When I was writing the stories, I decided to make character sort of like, what do you call them? Like character profiles
Yeah.
separate from the stories because I've noticed that in some writing, like some people spend a long time describing who a character is, and it usually gets boiled down into hair color, eye color, kind of just a little bit of the bare bones basics of what they're wearing. And some writers spend more or less time on it. And I decided that, you know what, I'll just kind of cut that out and just put it somewhere else because you can either read the profiles and have like a better idea of who you're reading of or referencing, or you can kind of just build your own as you go,
Yeah.
I suppose.
I completely agree with that. I've I think I might have done a little bit of describing the characters, but it really is such a trope of old wedgie literature that people just automatically start the story with this. Say Sarah was a short, blonde, busty woman, yeah, wearing these things, and she put on this underwear and this bra, and it 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 in my mind at least that kind of sets the tone for this is going to be jack off material purely. um, and I think there's a couple exceptions to that, but for the most part I think it is a lot better, and I think it's just better writing practice to figure out who your characters are beforehand or as you go, and you just implement those details through indirectly,
Hmm.
whether that's through dialogue or someone remarks about it or uh, something happens with their interaction. But yeah, like a little bit of what you were saying earlier, like with the Harry Potter book series, um, J.K. Rowling kind of gives a little bit of description of the characters,
Hmm.
but most of the time, like before I saw the movies, I didn't really think about. I mean, I didn't really. I
And
wasn't
I know
just
what you're getting at. It's like there's a
yeah,
very loose description of the character. There's not a lot of detail involved, but just a very loose, like you kind of know ish what you're dealing with, but you just fill in the blanks a little bit on your own. Because
Yeah.
I think well, let me rephrase that. For full name, then, Shadow Melder, he does that with a couple of his stories, where he doesn't really do a whole lot of details aside from details that just come up organically throughout the stories.
Yeah.
And he's been doing that more recently. So that's a pretty good example. And another one that some people may or may not know is if you're familiar with Brandon Sanderson, his
That
characters,
name sounds familiar.
yeah, he is a pretty big sci-fi, well, not sci-fi, fantasy sci-fi writer. If you ever get the chance to look him up, got some good stuff. But point being is that he also does the same kind of deal where, let me put it to you this way, like the main character of one of his books, Mistborn, he's only ever described her as, at least in the beginning, as kind of short, looking a little boyish, with like dark hair, and that's kind of about it. So you're kind of left to just sort of like, you can either run with that or you can just be like, oh, okay, well, what if they just look a bit more like this? Or you just kind of you kind of build your own image of them on your own. And to
Yeah.
me, I know that I have nothing against it because if other people like, do the other way around, it's like, okay, cool, fine. But I prefer to do it that way. Because that way you also don't have to spend like a paragraph or two just describing what your character looks like.
Yeah. But I mean, and that kind of is where the luxury of having a novel comes in hand.
Yeah.
Where you have that space. But I absolutely agree that you need. I think it's much better to just take that time to tell the story instead of
Mhm.
describe a character. Yeah, because then the action is already is a paragraph or two ahead of where it would have been.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any plans to write about Willow Edward Geist, the so-called Miss Wedgie?
Oh,
I'm curious about her.
well, let's see. I need to remember again. Hang on a second. It's been a while since I actually thought of that at all. So my original plan, as any writer knows, you have a lot of plans.
Yep.
Like a very small minority of them actually just work out or are written down. Because for me, I need to have like that drive to do it, and I normally don't, so I don't really do that. But I had plans of like way down the road introducing either like a relative of hers or her as a character. But that's not supposed to be for a while. And that's not supposed to be after like a lot of writing and a lot of stories. So chances are nothing will really come of it. But if I
Okay.
ever get the urge to write again, it'll probably be like a bit later on down the road or something more important or another bridge of the story or something like that. Like she'll probably be mentioned if I do write maybe once or twice just to be all like, oh, she made this town. Legend has it she's kind of a bitch. But yeah, that's about it really.
She sounds like a good time. That's someone I'd want to hang out with. Did you? Is there a reason why it was a lumber tycoon who made the town, and why it was a lumber town originally, and then turn into Wedgie Town?
Not really, no. I think the only reason I had was, well, I kind of had a very basic, bare bones reason. Was that so? My mental picture of this town was some town just in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere that people kind of. It's like if you ever gone on like a road trip and you're driving somewhere and then you see a town come up and you gotta wonder to yourself, why is there a town here?
Yeah.
Like, why would someone decide to settle here? It's in the middle of nowhere. And so for me, it was like, well, I might have written something sarcastically, like in the very beginning. Oh yeah, there it is. What was it? A sleepy little town tucked away in the forested mountains of who knows where. Because
Yeah.
it's just like it just needs to be somewhere nondescript. I'm not sure why I chose it to be that way. It just kind of fit in the setting in my head. So it was supposed to be just like, well, what would there be that would motivate a person to stop and make camp here? There's a lot of
Yeah.
trees. Huh, okay, sure, let's go with that. There's a lot of trees, so maybe this was like a lumber settlement somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. And, this family like of lumber tycoons decided to settle. The power went a bit to their heads. Then the things kind of changed and shifted until we're left with Willsville as it is now. So, not exactly a super in-depth explanation, just kind of like, well, when I was thinking of it, it was why would there be a town just in the middle of the mountains in the middle of nowhere? Because I'm sure other towns have other reasons for existing, either because someone was really tired and just wanted to stop moving for a while, or there's like a really lucrative silver mine nearby or something like that. But for me, it was
Yeah.
just like, well, you know, why would people stop in the middle of a forest to make a town? I mean, it's good lumber, I guess. Oh, there's good lumber? Huh, let's go with that one. And I do remember that a long time ago I had ideas to introduce like supernatural elements eventually, super down the road. As you know, a lot of plans happen, but not a lot of them really work out or get written down. And I kind of was like, okay, well, to be fair, a creepy random supernatural stuff does tend to happen inside of a forest, inside of a town in the middle of nowhere. So I guess that kind of works too.
Yeah. So, how am I trying to say this? The Some of the best ideas don't need to be super convoluted and in depth and have all these different explanations for it. They can just be as simple as why are there towns in the middle of nowhere? And like, I've traveled a lot, so I've seen many of them. And that definitely is a question that comes up. So uh, I'm wondering, would that be something that you'd pursue then? I mean, I guess you said earlier that you had plans to sort of go into it way down the road, but if you were able to get back into writing, is that something that you would attempt to figure out, and like, how this town actually came to be?
Oh, the
Because
origin
that is,
story of the town.
yeah, because that really is like it. It's such a simple question, but a lot of the time, from the simplest questions come the best answers. And I think you could potentially have lightning in a bottle with that.
Oh, I know. I suppose if I ever do, I'm not really sure, honestly, because I kind of just like the idea of having just a random town in the middle of nowhere that is kind of weird, and weird stuff happens there, and that's kind of its whole deal. And I don't know if I'd ever really like want to give an explanation because what
Hmm.
was it? It's a weird thing because I like having a reason for things, but sometimes in a story, one of the best choices you can have is not knowing why something is this way. Because it
Yeah.
adds that nice little layer of mystery to everything. Of like, it's such a simple question, but no one really knows the answer to it.
Hmm.
Like, what was it? I remember that in my it's like in my area. Well, not quite, but I guess downtown near my area, there was emphasis on was there was this one white house that no one that really avoided being developed at all, like with the passion. And it was in horrible, horrible shape all the time. But people lived there, kind of, because you could see cars pulling in every now and then. And everyone kind of assumed that, well, it might have been like some kind of a meth lab or maybe like a drug den or something like that. Or maybe it just was like just some guy who was holding on to it for like sentimental sake. And it was nice having that mystery, at least
Hmm.
until the police broke in and found out that it was actually a meth lab. So then it was kind of like, well, that's nice, but I liked wondering what it was before we knew it was a meth lab.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting that like so many mysteries are so intriguing purely because we don't know the answer to them.
Hmm.
There's a couple of them that come to mind. There's two that specifically come to mind. With there was a guy who was going to Japan or something, and his passport. He showed his passport, and then he was pulled into security, something like that, because his passport was for a country that didn't exist.
Oh.
And he was super insistent on it.
Oh.
And they put him in a room overnight so they could figure out what to do with him. And then when they came back the next morning, he disappeared. He was gone.
That is pretty cool.
And nobody ever knew. Yeah, nobody knew where he came from, where he went. And then there was another one with a guy who hijacked the plane.
Oh,
and
D.B.
stole
Cooper.
a bunch of. Yes, D.B. Cooper. He stole a bunch of money, and then he disappeared, never to be heard from again.
I do love a good mystery.
Yes, unsolved mysteries really are one of the most intriguing thing, and one of the most imagination-driving aspects of life. So it definitely, and it kind of, in a way, it's sort of, if you have that in your story, it sort of increases engagement with the reader, because then they're left to fill in the blanks, like, oh, maybe this happened, or maybe this happened.
Yeah, there you
so they start to care about it a little bit more.
Yeah, so you think of it yourself, and chances are whatever you're thinking of is probably way better than whatever I could think of.
Yeah. So there was something that I noticed. I'm sure a lot of people did when they read it. It seems like a stylistic choice is using parentheses for thoughts instead of the single quotation marks. Is there a reason behind doing that, or like what was going on with your thought process when you chose to do that?
Oh yeah, no, that was kind of a style choice for me.
Okay.
Because to me, whenever I saw the single parentheses, I've seen it used as, a way to tell what your character is thinking of, or your character is saying a quote and you can't just put double quotation marks because then it looks weird.
Yeah.
So to me, when I was thinking of like how would I convey a character's thoughts, because I did want to convey a character's thoughts, I didn't want it to be like where their thoughts are written into the description, because that's not the writing style either. So I wanted something that implied. I guess it's kind of like, I don't know. To me, when I read the parentheses, I always feel like I'm supposed to be reading in between the lines when I'm reading a parentheses. So it kind of just, to me, it mentally implied that it's inside of their process and it's inside of their thoughts. It's a little more just that it's a little more like not obvious. And it's a very clear. It's also just very clear that this is a signal of they're starting to think of something, and it probably won't always be used every time a character is thinking of something, because I might just write in like just in the description itself that they're starting to get a little more anxious or nervous, or just do the parentheses instead and just have their direct thoughts in, because I guess it's a bit of show and not tell. So I'm not like the parentheses were just to like imply that it's a subconscious thing, and also because with the singular quotation marks, it just didn't really feel quite right to me, because I mean it works just fine, but to me it always felt a little off. Like I know what it's supposed to mean, but it doesn't look like it matches what it's supposed to mean. So to me, that's what the parentheses meant.
Okay. So I'm going back to something you said a little while ago about the supernatural. You wanted to incorporate that at some point. What exactly is I'm trying to find his name. Let's see here.
Devin?
The one guy in the story. Let's see here. The idiot, as you refer to him as.
The idiot. Oh yeah, Devin. I know what you mean. The guy with The walking
Yeah,
the walking anime
the
protagonist.
the white-haired hottie. Yeah.
Hmm.
Is he? Does he have any supernatural thing to him, or is he just? Is that kind of like the epitome of the anime?
That is my explanation for. Well, let me rephrase it. So Devin is a bit of a parody
Mm.
of the typical anime thing because I've mentioned in a couple of podcasts, but well, I guess not podcasts. I mentioned a couple of times before in the past that, or maybe I haven't. But point being is that when I try to make a character, I like my characters to either have an eccentricity or to be quirky in some way. And so normally I do that by cranking a stereotype up to 11 or by subverting a stereotype or something like that. And so this one, Devin was supposed to be like what was it, the cranked up stereotype of your typical white haired anime protagonist, combined with a little bit of how would this actually work. So he does have a slight supernatural edge to him, but a lot of him can be explained with science and biology, as weird as it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah.
Um.
Uh-oh.
Um.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
What's the?
No, nothing. Nothing. Keep going.
Well, I had something in my head and I forgot what it was. It is kind of an interesting dichotomy when I'm looking at it that it is clearly so established that this is these wedgie games, if you will, happen constant. They are a continuous thing in the lives of these people,
Hmm.
and it's just like this is an established thing that will happen, and yet the nerds like Amelia constantly fight against it, and yet in a way they sort of submit to it.
Do we not do the same in daily life? We don't like something, we try to deal with it, find out that we can only do so much and just either go with it or just make it really hard for everyone else along the way. Oh shit,
Yeah.
that got grim fast. Oh, that was,
Well,
oh god, that got kind of
nothing
meta.
wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Um, and it definitely helps bring a level of realism when you're drawing on your own experiences and what you've seen and been through. It helps readers connect with the story. It makes it feel more like you're just catching a glimpse of these people's lives as opposed to this world just started when I started reading it. And that's some of the best stories to me, like The Office. That's because it feels like you're just part of. It feels like you're just jumping in at this point in the characters' lives, as opposed to what I just said. The world was just now created, and you're. This is the entirety of it.
I had a feeling you'd mention The Office eventually.
It's just a matter of time.
Call it just a random hunch, but it was gonna come up one way or another. I was just wondering how you're gonna do it.
I don't plan it; it just happens.
Yeah, sure. I'll believe you, probably.
I remember what I was trying to remember. The singing. What is that about?
Hang on a sec. Let me just. Oh yeah. I was gonna. What was it? So the singing. What was it? It's more of the intention than the actual song itself, because the song itself is just an old. I think it's Gaelic marching. Is it just an old Gaelic marching tune? As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people have already heard it, but just don't know what it is when you write down the lyrics. Are you familiar with what was it? Halo 3 ODST?
Nope.
That's too
I
bad.
remember when it came out. Never played. I've only ever played the first Halo.
Oh, okay.
And only a little bit of it.
All right, that's fair. So, have you ever watched any of the live action trailers for it then?
No.
That's okay, because in one of them there was that song inside of it, and it was like, oh, that's a really nice song. And then a movie came out with it within like the first 5 minutes a while ago. I think it was called what was it? King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. And it was
Okay.
in like the first 5 minutes, and I was like, I kind of like that. What does it actually mean? So I found it. It's like, oh, it's a marching song. That's kind of nice. And to be fair, that doesn't actually matter at all for how the song was used. It was more of like well, it sounds kind of to me. I'm no musician. As a matter of fact, I'm horrible with instruments. So to me, it sounds very lilting and very lyrical and nice with a bit of pushing firmness to it. And the idea was that it's just mesmerizing. Yeah, because it's like if anyone has ever heard someone singing in real life, and you're just kind of caught up in the moment of just like, I just kind of want to be here and listen to this.
Mm-hmm.
It's something like that, really, where it just kind of catches your attention, and it's like, well, I feel like I should be doing something, but I kind of just want to stay here and just see how this plays out. Because I'm sure all of us have at one point or another either heard someone singing or heard a song come up on the radio or been walking around on the street and seen like a busker doing something interesting and being like, oh, I do have somewhere to be, but this kind of has my attention for now. I'm just gonna this seems worth it. This seems cool.
Yeah,
So,
it's really just it's interesting that it's the only time that it's the only music that's used, and it's this super handsome teenage idiot who every time that someone hears it, they sort of slip into a trance. Is that just because they're so captured by is there some kind of, this is kind of like what I'm wondering, like the supernatural, is this like a power of his, is like his voice can completely capture your essence, your being?
oh yeah,
Or is it
that's a
just
little that's a little bit of Devin's, a bit of the supernatural edge to him.
okay?
Where I think I might have coined it as like a mesmer or something like that, where
Yeah.
it's kind of just a slight mental nudge where if you're aware of it and you kind of, or if you're aware of it or you're kind of just really too emotionally charged, then chances are, it won't work at all. But if you're kind of relaxed or you're not expecting it or something like that, I guess you could call it like a very shitty version of hypnosis. Oh, I forgot to ask. Am I allowed to swear?
Absolutely, yeah. This is
Perfect.
my podcast.
So yeah, it's like a very not powerful, shitty version of hypnosis where I guess just low level hypnosis really, where it's just kind of a mesmer. Where
Okay.
it's just mesmerizing. Makes you a little more prone if you're either not aware of it, or I guess if you're just not super sharp or anything like that. I mean, it's not like he can force you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. It's more like he just nudges you in the right direction, or rather the direction that he wants you to go.
Yeah. Um. Man, I had something else and I forgot what it was.
Hmm. Do you remember a little bit of what you were trying to go for next?
No.
Because you were going on yeah.
There definitely does seem to be a little bit of setup for future stories. Like, I think one of the primary things that points me in that direction, to believe that, is when you first describe Devin with the jacket with the weird symbol. Did you have any plans at the time to have that symbol come up and actually explain what it is?
Yeah, actually, I kind of did. That's more for just further on down the line. In that very fantasy world that every writer has of when I do eventually write or have the motivation to or have the urge to, I will write this, but it will be further on down the line, because if I write it right now, it just wouldn't work with what I'm trying to go for.
Mm.
Hmm.
But you throw in the little clues.
Yeah.
So people aren't just completely blindsided.
Oh
by
yeah,
it.
Chekhov's gun is very valuable.
Yeah,
It's a very valuable tool, and I'd prefer to use it than not use it and suffer for it later. Because
absolutely.
I do like a good twist, but it's only if the twist makes sense going back and
Absolutely.
looking for context clues. Like I've already mentioned that I love a good mystery, and part of a good mystery is if you look hard enough or read things the right way, then the ending does make sense and you can kind of get it. Like, have you ever seen Knives Out?
No.
Okay, it's a show, sorry, not show, it's a movie on Amazon Prime. It is a murder mystery, and it's probably one of my favorite murder mysteries out there, right next to Clue. It's probably
Okay.
one of my favorite ones because you can piece together the ending. You can guess the ending right about in the middle of the movie just from the clues that you've been handed.
Okay.
And I just like I mentioned, I like having an explanation for things. So it
Yeah.
might, don't get me wrong, it might not be a very good explanation or a thorough one, but it's an explanation, kind of, because you got clued into it a long time ago, and maybe you're sharp enough to catch everything and put it together yourself. Like
Yeah.
I remember when I first started writing. God only knows how long ago that was. Only 2018. Holy shit! Time does not feel that fast. Okay, so I remember when I was first writing it, some dude actually it's DM'd me or PM'd me. I forget which one it is. Over DeviantArt and was like, "Hey, so I think I might have pieced together like Devin's thing," and I was like, "Oh, that's cool. What do you think it is?" And he was like, "Oh, it's this," and I'm like, "Well, how'd you figure that out?" He goes, "Well, context clues, the fact that it is purposely just stricken from his records and all of that." I'm like, "Okay, gotta hand it to you, man. You piece it together." So it's just
Nice.
that, which, as insulting as it sounds, on the flip side, it does depend entirely on your audience being able or willing or sharp enough to actually catch what you're throwing at them.
Well,
So,
I mean, I think that kind of I don't think you necessarily need to have a certain kind of audience. I think as long as you just put the clues in, then there will be someone who will look at it and then like, oh wait, there's this and this. Oh, it means this. So there's always going to be people like that who just naturally figure these things out. Um, and that definitely is like putting little clues in way ahead of time and then slowly building it up. So I'm more so I don't particularly like figuring out the ending of a story way
hmm
before the ending happens. I more
hmm
so like being given these tiny clues that may seem innocuous at first and you might not recognize them as actual clues, but then when you get to the ending you're like, oh shit, that's right, because of this, and now it makes sense.
yeah, I see what you mean. You go with the flow, and you're just
Yeah,
waiting for it all to make sense because you're like, I want to see how this works.
yeah, like, and I did that when I think a couple times, like especially in the one story that I did one part of and haven't continued since. But
Oh,
I mean, like, there's, I mean, I don't have a laptop, so I can't write anything at the moment.
that's a good point. That is a
um,
very good point.
but I mean, I think one of the best examples that comes to mind with that is Inception, um, where like the ending is very easily understood as to whether Dom is dreaming or not by if you've been paying attention to how his what are those things called? I can't remember. Um, the little things that they use to tell if they're in dreams or not. I
Yeah, I
can't remember
haven't
what
seen
they're called.
Inception, so I can't help you there, man. I'm just
Oh,
going to assume. I know.
well,
I'm just going to
there's
assume it's like the Matrix where they have that deja vu thing or little
well,
discrepancies that don't match up to real
it's
life.
well, it's like totems. That's what it is. they all have these totems to tell whether or not they're dreaming, and they're the only whoever's totem it is. That's the only person who is intimately familiar with it, knows it inside and out.
Mhm.
And so if you're paying attention throughout the whole movie to Dom's totem, you can see what it does when he's in a dream, and you can see what it does when he's in reality. And so just by paying attention to that, then because at the end it just gives the slightest glimpse one way or the other of whether he's dreaming or in reality. And
Mhm.
so many people could never just don't know whether he is or not, and it's such a simple thing as long as you're paying attention. And I mean, you're gonna get people. You're always gonna get your audience is always gonna be like that, and you're gonna have mostly people who are just there and they're not really paying attention very much. But you're also gonna have the people who are paying attention, and those are the ones that make it worth it.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Um, and then sometimes I've written some things that I thought I was super clever on, and turns out it was very easily seen through.
Oh, someone just caught onto it almost immediately, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst. That's the
But
worst.
it was. I think it kind of worked in my favor because it was the same story as that I mentioned before. I kind of did two things with that, where yeah, and that was more so like the red herring is like to kind of throw you off the trail of the one little piece. But that's enough about my stories. The Willsville Turf War.
Yay.
Just the title alone, I think, is after reading it, it that's what it is. It's the turf war for Willsville. So it kind of, but at the same time, like it doesn't say what once you've read the story, you know the title says exactly what's going to happen. But if you haven't, then it's kind of like, okay, what is this? It's a good title basically.
Oh, thank you.
It
Draws you in
draws you in.
because you're like, what does that actually mean?
It hooks you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you have any plan? I guess so. Are you still planning to continue this, or is this done? Is it in the past now?
I honestly have no clue because I mean there have been moments where I thought I was done with it, and then then something kicked me Hans where I thought I was done, and then
Sounds
something
familiar.
was then something was like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm like, well, I mean, I'm probably it's like because I think well Hans, pillar of the community that he is. I remember that what was it? It's not so much that I'm feeling like I was done, it's more of like I don't really know like as dumb as it sounds for all of the small little errors in my writing that I've done just in the stories if you because you don't have to look very hard to find them. They're there. You can find them pretty easily. But I do like to have a certain level of work that I'm okay with, like a certain quality to it. Of like maybe
Yeah.
sure there's a couple of grammar errors, but in terms of like story structure, story arcs, character interactions, like I like a certain level of quality to it that I just won't get if I have to make myself do it. And then every now and then something happens where I'm kind of just sparked, and it's like, well, I kind of want to do it now, like with Hans and his contests, because because when it first happened, I was like, oh, that's nice. Okay, that's about it then. Nice that it's happening, but that's pretty much it then. And then I was like, huh, well, that gives me an idea. And then I'd roll
Yeah.
around with that idea in my head for a little bit, and be like, ah, damn it, Hans, and I have to go write something down. Alrighty then. Oh, let's do it. Okay, back to the grind.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, contests are definitely not my thing.
oh yeah, that's not mine either, because I knew I wasn't gonna win, but I was like, well, might as well anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't necessarily think they're just for winning. It's more.
Mhm.
So, I think it's more so just a great way to drive people to write and put out the best stuff they can.
Oh yeah, total agreement there. Because it's for me, it's like as with a lot of writers, I'd assume it's just a matter of motivation. Yeah, the magical, elusive motivation. I
Yes.
swear, if they could bottle that, I'd be broke because I'd have to get a lot of it. Because
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I
yeah.
don't. I think I'd be able to just buy one bottle and use it very sparingly because I need the motivation to start. Once I'm started, then I'm good.
Oh yeah, once you got your momentum going, you're good. So why did I screw myself by doing it at 1 a.m. in the morning? Whew. Oh well.
So I guess I'll just say I'll say it as for present tense instead of like that you're done. Do you have plans to like out of all these characters? It's pretty obvious to me that you are going to have Devin in future pieces.
Oh yeah. If you're curious,
Are there?
oh sorry, go on. I'm just gonna take a guess.
Are there any other characters that you want to bring along with Devin, like Amelia?
Well, I'm planning on if motivation allows me, and just if I ever feel like it. The plan was to keep writing more stories and to actually bring along all of the characters. Maybe not necessarily like what was it? Maybe not necessarily have all of them interacting all the time.
Yeah.
But not for them to be one-offs. No. I want there to be some character arcs and investment and changes and all of that. Just really the good shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where a one-off character, fine, sure, okay, maybe every now and then, but like I'd like to just carry them along and keep doing stories with them, because then you already have a precedence and you're already familiar with them. And it's like, oh, they did this last time. How are they going to do this time? Whoa, what are they going to do? Maybe they're going to do this. Holy shit, they didn't do that. They did this instead, and it works for them. Oh, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like one-off characters are more so a plot device than actual characters. They just they're there to serve the plot, and they do their thing, and then they're gone. Whereas overarching characters, they're actual characters because they have time to be fleshed out, and they have this history of things that they've done, and you those are the characters that you latch on to.
Yeah, that, and I'll be damned if I let something that I made a whole ass character profile for all of them. So I'm not just gonna let them slide into obscurity. Or if I do, it'll probably be for a reason. But it's like, come on, I put the effort into fleshing them out. The least I can do is make sure that they're actually like used or expressed the way that they were meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people definitely become more invested in the Michael Scotts than the guy who was at the liquor store who sold him 15 bottles of vodka. Something that I've been thinking about for a little while is, so many of us suffer from motivation, and I'm wondering if it would help to kind of take a page out of Hans and Shadow's book to team up and write stories together.
Oh dear God. The can of worms that you have opened, my good sir. Oh boy.
It would. I think that would definitely help keep the motivation. One, because it's like then it's easier to bounce ideas off of and help work things out when you get stuck on something that you're writing. And two, it's in, at least for me, it's like I don't want to let this guy down. I gotta keep writing because he's counting on me.
I know exactly what you mean. We're having a teamed partner kind of deal with the writing assignment, so you can keep each other on your toe. I'm saying it the wrong
Keep
way.
each other honest.
I was gonna say on each other's toes, but that works too, I guess.
Yeah. You keep each other accountable.
Yeah, I see what you mean with the paired thing, because I think I've only because there are collaborations out there,
Yeah, there are.
and I guess as some of us would know about than others, dulling a knife.
Yeah. And Flame Over Darkness.
Oh yeah.
They're still putting that one out.
Oh yeah, they're still working on it. Actually, still writing in, putting it out, and they got some lovely art for it too. That was quite nice.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I got like Bloodborne vibes from it a little bit. Probably just because of the mood.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the example that I'm working off, is like they've been putting out different chapters of the story for a while now, and they're not really slowing down on it. They keep going, and I think it really comes down to the fact that it's two people who are motivated about the idea, and they both want to put it out.
It's a passion project, and let's not forget too that Hans and Shadow haven't gotten to where they were by just sitting around and putting out the occasional story. Like, they put in a lot of work.
Absolutely.
They've been putting out stories for ages, and just they've been keeping at it for sure. They're consistent with it. I mean, yeah, sure, they slowed down a little bit recently, but Hans has made up for that with a bunch of contests every now and then, or with his podcast and all of that, with his interview stuff, so he's branched out. And then Shadow has made up for it by collabing with Hans and doing all of these other stories on top of it. So they're also just legends, to be fair, so there's that.
Yeah. I mean, so do you have anything that we have not talked about with this story that you want to talk about?
Anything that we haven't already mentioned that I would like to discuss? Let's see. Let me think about that one. We've already gone over the setting.
Is there anything that you're hoping people picked up on that they haven't yet?
Oh, I guess not really so much of that, because there haven't been a ton of clues to pick up on. But this part might end up just being cut out because it will be kind of boring, to some might imagine. But the science, the biology, because there's only one person that this really applies to, and that'd be Devin. But like I said, I like to have a reason for as much as I like to have reasons for everything whenever I can. And so I've applied some science to Devin to be all like, okay, how would this work? How would he make sense? Being as realistic as a wedgie story can be about some random town in the middle of nowhere that has regressed into a caste system. And just like, because just the biology of it, because like I said, it probably will end up having to cut out this section, but if you really think about it, what Devin isn't exactly super hard. Well, let me rephrase that. Isn't exactly impossible to make. Just very questionable ethics and all of that, because you're tinkering with a person, which some people are okay with, some people are not. AKA that one dude in China who modified those two kids to make them a little more resistant to, I think it was HIV or AIDS. I forget what exactly. And then that kind of just made the world explode. Well, let me rephrase that. The sciencey world explode for a while, because it was like, you can do it. Don't know if you should, but you can. So there's a little bit of Jurassic Park in there, where it's just like that classic line of, you spent so long wondering if you could that you didn't really think about whether or not you should.
Yeah.
And just like what makes, just like the meat and bones of what makes Devin work, of just like a very popular example that I'm sure some people might have but not actually realize that they have. Have you ever heard of double bone density?
No, I haven't.
All right, that's okay, because it is kind of obscure. So it's a very rare genetic condition, well, I guess genetic trait really, that your bone born, English today, that you are born with bones that are twice as dense as the average persons are supposed to be. And this grants a lot of benefits, and there's some consequences of it too. First and foremost is that if you've never broken a bone before, there's a decent chance that it might be because your bones are just twice as dense. If you haven't broken a bone before, like, it won't give you bigger muscles or anything like that. It just means that your bones are a lot denser and stronger. It also means that your swimming is shit because you will be heavier. Well, let me rephrase that. You're going to be denser. So if you try to swim, like, you can, it won't be pretty, and it's going to be a lot more work than it would be for a normal person. But it's there, and there are some people that have a mutation that allows them to only need 4 hours of sleep. That one, yeah, I know, it's cool, and it's like I said, it's a mutation. Not a lot of people have it. They only need 4 hours of sleep, and it's not like one of those, I couldn't work on 4 hours, don't worry about it. I might have pulled triple overtime, but I could work with only 4 hours of sleep. It's like they genuinely only need 4 hours, and if they get more than that, they start feeling restless because it just doesn't work with them. And what's something that people would probably at least recognize? Like,
Well, you're making me wonder if I have that, just because
double bone density.
I've never broken a bone, and when I swim, I can swim, but I have
it ain't pretty, huh?
I have trouble getting air to my limbs.
You mean floating?
No, like I get super out of breath very fast when I'm swimming.
But like I said, like it's something that some people have. It's very hard to tell if you actually have it because, to be fair, how often would someone fall into the circumstances of they should have broken a bone, but they didn't, either because the situation wasn't severe enough or because they, as a person, were just to quote the young kids nowadays, the youngins, they're just built different.
Yeah.
I know. I had to.
You can. There's a pretty easy test you can use. Just look up the amount of pressure that it takes to normally break a bone, and then test it. And if it doesn't break at that pressure, then you have it.
Ah, yes. What a flawless test that could never go wrong. Brilliant.
That's science, big science.
You're right. It is science. I don't know if it's ethical or not, but it's there.
Well, if you do it to yourself.
Yeah, never mind. That's pretty good then. I mean, no, it's not. With adult supervision.
If you do it to yourself, you can't. Well, what if you're the adult? You're supervising yourself. There's no ethics then.
Never mind.
You're gonna question. Yeah, as long as you're doing it to yourself.
Oh yeah, there was another one too that I remembered that some people might be a little more aware of, but it's when some people are born with, because of their family lineages, have more straight up Neanderthal DNA. And it's not like, oh my god, they're like 30% caveman. It's not that much. It's usually only like 2 to 4% of your DNA might be Neanderthal. And it normally results in, well, as weird as it might sound, or I guess it might make sense really, is that your muscles will get bigger if you do work out more than they probably should for a person of your size. You also won't be, let me rephrase this, you also, when you get sick, it's harder for you to get sick, but when you do get sick, you're hit twice as hard as you're supposed to be. And it's just stuff like that, where it's just genetic quirks that already exist. So technically speaking, the challenge just lies in bringing them out on purpose without just fucking up the person that you're working on or whatever you're working on. Like Dolly the sheep or those 2 kids in China. Or when the scientific community was tossing around the idea of bringing back extinct species and being all like, well, maybe they should only be extinct. Maybe we should only bring them back if we made them extinct. Let's go with that rule instead. So I do like having, like I said, an explanation, and it's very convenient that I like biology enough to have a biological explanation for most of it. Ah, science.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, bit dull, that part, that tangent.
Ah. You want to hear the secret of my podcast?
I believe it's called You Don't Give a Shit What Other People Think, but go on.
Basically, yeah, but I don't cut anything out, so it's you get the full unedited conversation.
Oh no, I have been lied to earlier by saying that you can cut it out. I am
Well,
just so.
that wasn't a lie.
Oh
I said I can.
no.
I said I can. I didn't say I will.
Oh no, I am wounded. This is a. Oh dearly me, I have been betrayed. Oh. Oh well. It's a little more interesting that way anyway.
Yeah, that's what I like is actual conversations, not what somebody wants to put out there.
Mm-hmm.
Wants.
A little more
Yeah.
raw, realistic.
Yeah. This is how life works. You have parts that aren't as interesting to some people and parts that are more interesting to other people. So, but it's all interesting to me because it's all about the story.
Oh, and that just heartwarming.
Well, you have anything else that you want to talk about?
I think that about wraps it up, really, because I'm more of a setting and character-oriented person, so stylistic choices and writing and all that other kind of stuff just kind of falls right past me. So
Okay.
that's about it, really.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of the Best Book Club. Give it a like, give it a favorite, comment what you want to hear. If I'm ever able to get this episode up, then tell me what you think. Definitely check out this story, the Willsville Turf War, and any other stories that Mystic has put up.
Oh yes,
and I will. I mean, you're preaching to the choir there, buddy. And yeah, just I will catch you on the next episode.
Peace.